This video is going to go over the best Warlock builds for endgame content whilst running solo in Destiny 2. Before I get into that, just want to remind people, make sure that you hit subscribe if you haven't already for more content like this. So we've already stated what we're building for here. This is build crafting for endgame content whilst running solo for minus 25 delta content or even minus 15 delta content. Or entry level dungeons, right? But basically, that's what we're building for. We're not making these builds to run on planets. We're not making a build for Nessus Artifacts Edge, because we can do this with wire weapons. We're not making it for patrol. This is not endgame content, apart from maybe Master Lost Sectors and Legend Lost Sectors kind of are. Like there's one on EDZ today, so you can use the builds I'm saying in these as well. But we're making it with content that's more difficult in D2, with that in mind. I'm going to show you each element, Solar Void, Arc, Stasis, Strand, the two best builds for solo, I think, for each one. And also for neutral, like a neutral exotic that works on any element in the game. Now, my original idea for this video was to make it for Warlock, Titan, and Hunter, but the video will be too long. So if you want a Titan and Hunter version of this video, then let me know. And let's see how well this video does. If it does well enough, I'll make independent build videos for Hunter and Titan as well. This isn't your average build video. This is coming at it from an objective point of view. Would this build work whilst we are solo in endgame content? And that's the perspective we are looking at this from. So let's talk about neutral based exotics for the Warlock. What are the best Warlock neutral based exotics for builds? Right, well I believe the best to probably be the Stag, because, well, this is one of the best ones because this gives you rift energy whilst you are behind cover. There's nothing that you need to do apart from good movement and play from a distance. This is fantastic against minus 25 delta enemies, right? So Stag's one of the best neutral based exotics for the Warlock, hands down. It's within the top two for me, especially like solo GM content. This is up there. And then Apotheosis Veil. Apotheosis Veil's really got on well, but it can be used on other classes as well. It's a very good now neutral exotic. It's fantastic, especially with well this season, but it can be used on any other class. They buffed it recently, and you get an ability buff once you pop your super. Other generic neutral based exotics would be things like Eye of Another World. This buffs your stat distributions. It's decent, but I think we've come away from this a little bit. It used to be really good on a Sharebinder Warlock. It still kind of is. It's just yeah, it is one of the top picks, but I think Stag's a little bit better than that. Verity's Brow's really good for your grenade build, and this will work on any class. So this is also decent. Nezarec Sin isn't just a void build, it also works on any class as long as you've got a void weapon. So the caveat is you need a void weapon. It says void damage kills. It doesn't say void ability kills. It says void damage kills. So if you're using Graviton Lance but you're not on void, you know, maybe why would you do that? But if you are, then you're getting ability energy recharge rate. So Nezarec's also a really good another shout out. Apart from other neutral based exotics, there are Karnstein Armlets. So I forgot to mention this. Karnstein Armlets is now one of the best neutral based exotics in the game because it grants restoration on finishes and melee kills, which is very easy to do in dungeon content, but not as easy to do in Grandmaster Nightfalls. So it loses a little bit of power points in Grandmaster Nightfalls, but it's really good for a lot of other things, and with glaives as well, right? So Karnstein Armlets, one of the best neutral based exotics that you can think of, and Stag and Apotheosis Veil. There's things like Rain of Fire, but this is for like DPS rotations. It's to be considered for when you're doing solo DPS against a tanky boss. Lunar Boots is more team focused. A lot of it's just more team focused. But those are the best neutral based exotics. Now we'll go into the actual each element. So we'll start first with solar. So I've already prepared the builds. So build one is the Sunbracer loadout. Right, so this is what we've got for Sunbracers. Obviously, super choice depending on what you're using, but I will say just use well because Daybreak's no good without a certain exotic that helps it. So we go well. Phoenix Dive is just the play to make for some bracer builds. Incinerator Snap, the melee is just a little bit better to use on some bracers, but Celestial Fire is actually something that works now. Celestial Fire works with some braces it never used to. So when you get a melee kill, you get your grenade back. I suppose I should read out the description of the exotic, right? Increases the duration of solar grenades. Solar melee kills grant unlimited solar energy for a brief time. So when you get that melee kill, right, you're then going to get a influx of solar grenade usage. Thing is, you want to pair that with the aspects heat rises and touch of flame. So you're going to be floating, you're going to be firing, you're going to be throwing a lot of solar nades. But Incinerator Snap's going to kickstart the build off, right? Fragments, we've got Ember of Solace, Ember of Ashes, Ember of Torches, Ember of Mercy, the Fire Sprites. This is good if you're using something like Dragon's Breath, which is really nice. In terms of like armor mods, I'm not going to go too much into that, right? But I suppose it is important on this, so you can go triple outreach if you want on the class piece. Elemental charge is nice for the fire sprites if you're using Dragon's Breath. Any orb mod that you think's useful. I mean, I've got invigoration on in this case. Just to note, on all the builds, I have not put any resistance mods on because this is just to give you the dim links to you. You then put on the resistance mods depending on what you are doing. You always have to swap the resistance mods out. But concussive dampener is always something that you should have on when you're at a minus 25 delta. It is very important that you do that. So just remember, some of the mod slots, if you see, okay, are empty for you to fill in when you need to, right? I'm just putting the basic essential stuff on. You fill in the blanks depending on what you're doing at that time. Momentum transfer. So when you do your melee, you're going to get great energy. When you cause damage with a grenade, you get melee back. You need to get that melee back as quickly as possible. Melee kickstart's nice. So obviously you're going to siphon mods on the arms, but you can also run firepower in this, but you want the momentum transfers, but you can run firepower. You can alternate slightly. So instead of melee kickstart, boom, run firepower. I could do that and then get loads of orbs, and then you could stack that with your getting your invigoration. So that is a slight variation. The slight variations on all these builds I'm doing. So I don't want you to tie me down and say, you didn't put on this mod. I don't want the conversation of the video to be about mods too much, but more about the pairings of exotics to subclass. That's mainly what it is. So some braces are fantastic setup, one of the best solo builds in the game, right? Second solo build that we've chosen, remember, we're only picking 2 builds per class. But obviously, on a solo warlock, we could run Karnsteins, we could run Stag, like I said, or Apotheosis Veil, like I've said. So the neutral builds can also be applied to this. That's why I went with that at the start. So build 2, okay, this is different. This is combining Dawn Chorus, which improves scorch effects. It does a lot of stuff for us, but the thing I want you to focus on here is the Daybreak. It buffs Daybreak hugely to the fact that it's one of the best Roman supers in the game for solo content, especially when you're under-leveled. So Daybreak turns from being a poor super to really good with the Dawn Chorus exotic. And that's what this is all about. And it also gives you a neutral game boost by giving us more scorch damage to anything that we're using scorch wise. So if we're using like incandescent weapons and Dragon's Breath, these weapons gain a bonus from that scorch effect. So we've got Healing Rift, Celestial Fire. So notice we've changed the melee ability because we don't need Incinerator Snap. Incinerator Snap has a huge Achilles heel, and that is that it has no range. It's only really good on a Sunbracer build, not so good on this, I don't think. I like Celestial Fire more than the Incinerator Snap when I'm using Dawn Chorus. Healing it, because we're going to focus on chain killing to get restoration. Icarus Dash this time. This is what I like, because you get Icarus Dash attached to the super, but I just like it for movement as a movement tool. We Touch of Flame always to enhance our stuff. It does a lot of stuff, does Touch of Flame. You should always have Touch of Flame on in PvE. Fragments, so Ember of Solace, Ashes, torches, Empyrean. Empyrean and Solace combined together give you the chain kill and power of infinite restoration as long as you've got a solar weapon on. You still want Solace on to double up Radiant Restoration. You can take it off and put on Ember of Eruption if you really want. Okay, if you want to, you can, but just know that your restoration build won't be as good without Solace. But sometimes I do take it off myself and sometimes I have it on. So don't tie me down to that fragment. I don't always have it on. I have it on sometimes, some of the time, not all the time. Stat distributions is something I haven't talked about. So, for example, on the other build, your tier 8 strength, you want plenty of strength, still always maintaining a tier 10 resilience in PvE. You always want to maintain a tier 10 resilience whilst under leveled. So on that build, it was all about strength and resilience. This build is all about resilience, recovery, discipline. We want to focus these 3 stats, forget about forget about intellect, strength, all that stuff on this certain build. It's these 3 stats because recovery is giving us more healing rifts, discipline for a high uptime on healing nades in this case, which means more chain kill and restoration, and always run tier 10 resilience in PvE. So that's your solar builds covered, right? I feel as though that's pretty straightforward, but if there's any questions about this, don't take too much note of weapons that I'm showing you in these builds. All right, because I was wanting to focus more about the build, but weapons do synergize well with builds as well. So in this case, Dragon's Breath synergizes really well, but there's all sorts of could have run Sunshot, Polaris Lance, yada yada, this, that, incandescent weapons. There's all sorts of things. Right, so that's solar done. Now we're on to Void. So build 1 of Void, the absolute one of the best Void builds in the game. It's within the top 2 best builds for Void, for a Void Warlock. So, we are using Nova Bomb Vortex, but you'll see sometimes I use in endgame content Nova Warp, and I'm not trolling with that. There is times I do it when I need a Roman Super to outlive damage from the enemies, and I sometimes use Nova Warp. Nova Warp's exceptionally good in Battleground GMs as well. So there is something there where I sometimes swap out a Nova for a Nova Warp. Depends on what you're doing. Nova Bomb Vortex is now a little bit better than Cataclysmic now. Cataclysm, sorry, just because they basically buffed this, and it's a little bit better than what it used to be. But you need to get used to throwing this Nova. It's not auto tracking. Sometimes I will use Cataclysm. It depends, but Nova Bomb Vortex is a little bit better now than it used to be. Heal and Rift. You can't. There's only one Void melee ability. Vortex Grenade, of course. Always use Vortex Grenade on a Void Walker. For the build I'm obviously showing you. Aspects are Chaos Accelerant and Feed the Void. Feed the Void basically gives you Devour for free on a Warlock. Titan, Void, Hunter do not have accessibility to this aspect. They have it in form of a fragment, which is a worse version of what a Warlock. Warlocks are king of Devours. Alright? They made that change a few months back, where the Devour on a Warlock stronger than what it is on a Titan and a Hunter. Fragments, so we've got Echo of Explosion, Echo of Obscurity. Now this one might look obscure to you, but it's actually fantastic when you're in like Battleground GMs and stuff, having to get an invis, having to get a finisher kill on a primary target to go invis, to go and dunk a battery. That is big. And it's also big for trying to maybe finisher kill a champ. There's so much utility to this, getting invis on a Voidwalker, that I think you should put it on. Then we've got Echo of Undermining to get the weakening effect. Once we don't have weakening via the artifact mods, this comes back into play. And I've got tier 10 discipline whilst Echo of Undermining is on, so try and get as much discipline as you can. It's a minus 20 discipline stat, yes, but the weakening effect, because you're going to be throwing so many grenades, is very important. Echo of Remnants gives you an increased duration on that Void grenade, so it's a no-brainer that you put that on. Chaos Accelerant allows for you to obviously charge the nade, and that's where the Counterverse Hold comes in. Now, Counterverse Hold has been slightly nerfed and changed over the years, and it's not as good as what it once was, but it's still fantastic. Same thing again with the mods. I'm not going to talk too much, but Ballstorm Detonation is what you want to run because you get class ability energy back when you deal damage with a nade. Pair that with a class mod called Bomber. When you cast your rift, you get grenade energy. Bomber is so good on Counterverse Hold builds that I recommend that you should definitely be running Bomber on your class piece. Now, same thing again, I haven't run any armor charge mods too much. on these builds because I just want to give you generic basic mods like procs wards, something good, get overshare whilst you're doing a finisher. So I'm not showing you like grenade kickstart. You don't need grenade kickstart is what I'm trying to get to, the point, because bolster and detonation procs without you having to have armor charges, which you might not have an armor charge if you can't get to the orbs. So you can put grenade kickstart on. Do it if you want. I sometimes may will as well. Like there's open for changes with this. It's not like set in stone. Just know that make sure you're not running the wrong mods like focus and strike. Why would you run focus and strike on a void walker? So this is the loop between bolstering and detonation, and bomber is free and it's very good because there's no armor charges needed for it. So yeah, like I said, there's some blank spots to fill in, and obviously it's really good when paired with Graviton Lance, right? So there's that as well, which we could have run the where's the volatile round build. So if we want to put Echo of Instability on, we can do that and take off Echo of Obscurity off, depending on what we're doing, and then enhance Graviton Lance even more, because obviously Graviton Lance is a good pairing with this setup. So that's essentially the Void Walker Controverse build, right? So now moving on to the next contender of builds is the Briar Binds. So Briar Binds is different to Controverse, and you need to spec it different. So again, whatever Nova that you want to choose, we can run Empowering or Healing depending on what we do here with this. So Child of the Old Gods, you want to run Child of the Old Gods with Briar Binds. So if you rock a Healing Rift, you get increased grenade and melee energy. But if you run an Empowering Rift, you get health. So we can not only get weapon damage bonus, but we can also get healing on top of that. Now I might cycle between the two. Okay, same thing. It's open for interpretation on what you are doing, right? So if you want healing with the Empowering, you can do that. Or if you want more grenades, then run Healing Rift. Feed the Void still. You still want Devour. You don't want to run anything else but Devour, all right? You don't need Chaos Accelerant with this, so your only choice is to run Devour. Fragments, this time we've got Echo of Explosion, Obscurity, Instability, Remnants. So we've got Instability on this build this time, so we are going to get Volatile rounds with Graviton Lance or whatever Void exotic we're using. So that's the Briar Binds build. Same thing goes. The Bolster and Detonation Bomber loop is beautiful for this because you're going to keep getting them rifts. You're going to pop a rift. You're going to get a bump to your grenade energy. You're also going to have Devour that's going to give you more grenade energy once you get your kill chain and going. So Briar Binds is a stationary void build that works well when you're in an enclosed zone. And Controverse Hold works better when you need to be more mobile. I'm not going to give you the true answer of which one's better. I think they're both slightly better in different circumstances. But these are the both supreme Void builds that you want to use on a Void Walker. So that's it now. Arc, talking about Arc next. So an Arc Warlock, the two best Arc Warlock builds in my opinion, well, number one is Geomag Stabilizers. They buffed it recently that you get more like Ionic Traces and stuff, which you're going to get more supers basically. So the setup is as follows. Chaos Reach, Healing Rift. Obviously, I wouldn't rock out Empowering Rift. You don't need an Empowering Rift for like GMs and stuff. Maybe dungeons you could squeeze out an Empowering Rift, but generally you need healing anyways, so you would just run healing. Pulse Grenade is the best grenade to use on Arc subclasses in general. So I recommend that you use that. Storm grenades aren't what they used to be, but they're still okay-ish on a Arc Titan. Aspects are Arc Soul, Electrostatic Mind. So Electrostatic Mind is going to give us our Ionic Traces. This is part of the build to get the Ionic Traces. The Arc Soul is going to give us a soul via our Rift, and we're going to be popping quite a few of those. Not as many as we would hope to, but on another build you will be crafting more Rifts. But you're still going to get plenty. Just make sure you've got a high recovery stat. Fragments are spark of magnitude for a better pulse grenade, spark of feedback for free plus 10 resilience, which allows you to get a better stat distribution, because stat distribution I think on arc is optimal. Spark of resistance to stay alive in endgame content, and spark of shock. You can take spark of feedback out for spark of recharge if you want, or run something else where you run spark of haste if you want, but you don't run. Warlock's not something that you run a lot with. It's more Arc Titan. But if you wanted to put that on, then you could. But you would need to distribute your stats to make sure that you still hit tier 10 resilience, bear in mind. So that's what we ran on an Arc Warlock with Geomag Stabilizers for an extended Chaos Reach that does huge damage. It makes Chaos Reach really good, basically. One of the best supers in the game. Very good when you're under leveled. But same thing goes, double balls from detonation, double bomber. It's going to work well. It's just going to work. You're going to get plenty of nades with your stats, plenty of rifts, and you're going to repeat that cycle of grenade, healing rift, super, grenade, healing rift, super, etc. And then if you pair it with like arc exotics like Wrist Runner, then it's just the icing on top. Very good in arc-based stuff. For example, Ghost of the Deep. The solo flaws for the Ghost of the Deep is significantly easier with Wrist Runner on, right? Because there's arc sources of damage. It's just a fantastic, it's one of the best arc exotics in the game. And obviously compare it to arc heavy if you want, etc, etc. I'm not going to talk too much about pairings of weapons, but I will give some mentions. Next arc build is Vesper of Radius. This is one of the best arc builds in the game. I've got resistance mods on there, it doesn't matter. Same thing, your stat distribution needs to be bang on. I'm running a T1099. Right, for these free stats, the less your mobility stat is, less mobility, intellect, and strength that you can get, the better, because you want to pour all that stats into the resil, recovery, discipline. In an ideal world, you want triple 100 here, which I believe I can get. I just couldn't be bothered to go on the website and do all the triple 100 stat check, and I just want to get a video out about it. Just know that you need to prioritize obviously recovery, because you're going to get rifts via Vesper. Now Vesper gives out an increased amount of healing rift energy when you were surrounded by enemies. So in certain add dense encounters, Vesper is crazy. You keep getting rifts back, which means you keep getting arc shockwaves and arc souls. Pairing that with the mods that I said about, the bomber and the balls from detonation, means I keep getting pulse nades back as well. The downside to Vesper build is that you don't have a good super, but on the upside, the neutral game is amplified by hundreds of percentages. It is that good. But if it's an activity that you can surge switch, then what you do is you use Vesper and then you surge switch to the Chaos, to the Geomag Stabilizers setup. So I hope that explains the Vesper build. I believe my fragments the same, magnitude, feedback, resistance, spark of shock. Same again, we could go spark of recharge if we wanted, if we want to take that off. You would have to adjust the stats accordingly when you do that though. So that's arc covered for Warlock. Now we go to Strand. Now this is where people are going to be, their eyes are going to look up a little bit, because they'll want to know the best Strand Warlock builds. Strand Warlock is okay. In endgame stuff, you've got to make it work with weapons that synergize with certain things. So this build is focused on the necrotic grip poison setup, which I used recently and showcased that off, right, which synergizes really well with Fawn. Fawn and necrotic grips have synergy. They work together. Right, it spreads out the poison more frequently. Fawn got a buff recently. It now has a catalyst. By the way, the catalyst isn't that good, but it is something. And Fawn feels good now in GMs as long as you use the build I'm showing to you. Fawn does not feel good on any other class other than a Warlock. If you try and use it on another class, it's just not that good. You may as well use Malfeasance at that point. So only one Strand super, of course. So Healing Rift, don't go empowering. Arcane Needle's going to work with your necrotic grip, right? We're using shackle grenades. It's important you get the grenade right. This isn't for shackling, by the way. It's not for shackling at all. Weaver's Call for Fredlings when you cast your rift, which will be there'll be quite a bit of a good uptime on the rift, but not as good as maybe like using the like say the stag, because the stag's good with this as well. If you want to use a stag with Strand Warlock, that is a really good setup because you keep getting your rift behind cover. Stag is always one of the best exotics in the game, and I'm not just joking. It really is. But focusing on what we're doing right here, we're using Mind Spun Invocation. So look, there's different effects. So I want you to focus on the bit where it says hold to consume your shackle grenade and activate Weaver's Trance final blows whilst Weaver's Trance is active. Create a suspend and detonation. So this is like shackle grenade on steroids. It procs on everything with area of effect damage. We've got fragments, thread of isolation for severing, so we can sever targets, right, which then causes them to unravel, which means we get a tangle, right? Damage in a tangle then gives us melee energy, which we kind of want that on this build. Then dealing damage generates grenade energy. We also want more grenade energy. So this is, although they nerfed Thread of Generation, it's actually still all right. And then Thread of Mind. Defeating suspended targets grants class ability energy. We will be doing this, so you're going to get grenade, healing rift, grenade, healing rift, super. And it's just that constant feedback, and even melee on this as well. All right. So this is actually really good. So that's the pairings of that. Same thing, double bolstering and double bomber. But sometimes you might take a bolstering off to run loaders. This is something that I do quite a lot. Say I'm using Wish Ender or something, or in this case Fawn. I want a kinetic loader on there because Fawn's a bad reload. So yeah, Fawn Poison works with the Weaver's Trance to spread out the damage to do suspend and detonations. It works with any area of effect damage gun. So, for example, Incandescent works with Weaver's Trance. Once Incandescent kills the enemies, it also suspends all the enemies surrounding it, giving us more grenade energy, rift energy, melee energy when we destroy a tangle, and the poison as well. So it's really good, this build. I can't understand how good it is, but it's only good on a Warlock with the Fawn. Right, so that's that build covered. Now we go to the next build. So this is a different take on a Strand Warlock. This is different to what we just did. It's a variation of the build. Well, actually, it's quite different. So now in this case, we're using a Fredling build. Fredlings have been hit over the last couple of months, but they're still decent-ish in the right circumstances. So we've got Fredling Grenade. That is the nade we're using. Healing Rift still is intact. Weaver's Call, cast your Rift to weave free Fredlings and deploy any Fredling you have perched. So you're going to get Fredlings via your Rift, but we're also going to keep this Mind Spun Invocation aspect on, because now the ability is different. It says hold to consume your Fredling Grenade and immediately generate 5 Fredlings. So we can immediately generate 5, right? Just from going from that, and then we can generate via our rift as well. So you're just getting Fredlings everywhere, right? Not to mention we've got the Swarmer exotic boots on, which states destroying a tangle spawn. Destroying a tangle spawns a Fredling. Your Fredlings unravel targets that they damage. So you see the playback loop. So we're also even getting Fredlings from the exotic boots Swarmers as well. So it's all Fredling damage. I don't recommend the Weave Walk build. It's just not that good now. It's weird. You're incapacitated when you use it. It's as simple as that. You can't do anything. It's like an invis, but you can't do anything. And it's very costly because it's applied to your melee energy and you get free charges. It's just not that good anymore. It was good when it first came out, and it's only 1 fragment slot. I thought Bungie had said they want everything to be 2 fragment slots. Now this is only 1. Weave Walk's not that good. Fragments are completely different. Thread of Evolution for additional damage via Fredlings. Thread of Rebirth, this is a big one. Strand Weapon Final Blows have a chance to create a Fredling. If you put a Strand Weapon on, you're going to get Fredlings, right? Tangles. Sorry. Yeah, you're going to get Fredlings. Picking up an Orb of Power grants Woven Mail. Now, I didn't use Woven Mail on the Form build, and you're going to say, well, why didn't you? Well, you didn't really need it because you're dealing damage from range. You're not going to pick up the Orbs, so you don't need the Woven Mail on the Form build, but you want it on this one because you're going to get tangle when you kill during Woven Mail. Not to mention you get damage resistance once you get Woven Mail, but they have adjusted Woven Mail. Woven Mail is not as a big factor as it used to be. Only on Hunter and Titan is it more of an important factor because you're close quarters on those builds. On a Warlock, you're not as close quarters. The Warlock Strand is meant to sit back a little bit and deal damage from a range. That's how a Strand Warlock just goes, right? And if you pair that with Quicksilver Storm, you're going to get even more tangles. Quicksilver Storm has been nerfed, but I believe it's still going to be decent. I'm not going to comment too much about that because I haven't used it yet to see what it's like when it's in its nerfed state. So, but I believe it's probably still going to be good because it's got that grenade launcher aspect to it. So that's the Strand completed. If there's any questions about any of the elements, you just ask them down below. That's what comments are for. Going to the final build is Stasis. Now, I said I was going to give 2 builds for every class, and I'm not going to do that for the Stasis Warlock because I've covered the neutral exotics that you need to use. And I think on a Stasis Warlock, the Stag or even Karnstein Armlets is a very good pick for the Stasis Warlock if you're doing it more of a neutral based thing. Because if you use a glaive on a Stasis Warlock, you can run around killing all the enemies and getting health. Because a Stasis subclass has no health regen whatsoever. So I think Karnsteins and Stag being able to sit behind cover, pop a rift, get critically wounded, pop a rift again, you're saving lives. And then you've got your turret down. It's really good. The only other exotic that you can use other than this one is an exotic called, if we get to it, it's called the Ballydorse Wrath Weavers. I've used this multiple occasions, and I can tell you on all occasions it's underwhelming. It's not the exotic's fault that it's underwhelming. It's a base problem with the Shadebinder super not being effective in PvE. They need to buff it. As soon as they buff super damage, the damage of the super from Shadebinder, then this is good. Right now it's not good because Shadebinder needs a buff. I see a couple of Stasis mains saying they're maining this. I don't know why you're maining it because it's just not that good. I've used it. It barely kills a minus 25 Delta champ. And I mean barely. I don't think you can. I think you need to do some assistive damage to then kill him. That is just not good when other supers can do much better. Behemoth Stasis Titan can do so much more than a Stasis Warlock. So forget about the super. The super's not that good to spec for it. So in return, this is where you want to spec for the neutral gameplay of Stasis Warlock. I've just said Stag's really good with it. Karnstein's really good with it. Stuff like that. I have another world we used to be the build, but nowadays it's Osmiomancy gloves. So this is all about cold snap grenades. Your cold snap grenades have an additional charge that recharges quicker on direct impact. The seeker spawn from cold snap grenades travels farther. Now, because you get 2 cold snaps, the playback loop that people do is they'll put a turret down, a stasis turret, then they'll throw a cold snap, right? Or the reverse of that. Or maybe throw a cold snap. No, put the turret down, then throw a cold snap, and then you sort of get great energy and stuff. But I don't use it like that, but you can. So that's the gauntlets. Obviously, Stasis Super, there's only one. Healing Rift, of course, you need to have that. You've got no healing other than this. Cold Snap Grenade needs to be on so that you get 2 grenades via the exotic gauntlets. Then you got Bleak Watcher. So this is your turret build, right? So this is, you need to have this on. If you're a PvE main for Stasis Warlock, you must be using the turrets because the Glacial Harvest type builds are rubbish. The Whisper of Rime, they nerfed that stuff. It barely works with the overshields. It's a really poor build. Forget about Glacial Harvest, right? Then you have Ice Flare Bolts. Ice Flare Bolts chain your Stasis stuff, which works really well with a turret. So use these 2 in combined. Fragments are Whisper of Shards to get a boost in grenade recharge rate, which you need for the turrets. So this is a critical element. Whisper of Torment, damage you take gives you grenade energy. Yet again, playing into the power factor of getting your turret back. And then Whisper of Chains. I think this is really good and it ups your recovery, especially if you're suffering on your recovery stat. Then getting that plus 10 recov and being more tanky where there's your stasis turret, right, or stasis or frozen targets, you're going to get that damage resistance buff. Whisper of Refraction is just an icing on top to give us more class ability energy. Because the more class ability energy we get, we then have Balsam Detonation, which does work with the turret, right? And then that's going to combine with Bomber. They link in together for free, no armor charge required. You just keep getting your turret back, and you've got 2 charges. So if you want to throw an odd cold snap, you can. I honestly have never really played it that way. I only just keep throwing 1 turret at a time. That's just how I do it. But if you want to be somebody who throws the cold snap, I'm not saying you can't. It's just the cold snaps sometimes don't work like you would hope against uneven terrain. So if you mess your grenade up and you throw the cold snap and it hits a wall, that's your fault. That's your fault because I wouldn't have threw it unless I know it's hitting that ad. Because if you waste a charge, you could be messed up. Imagine you're backed in a corner, you throw your cold snap and it fails on you. If it fails on you, you've lost one of your turrets, and it might have been your last turret. And if it's your last turret, good luck to you. You're going to have to pop a super now to survive in minus 25 delta content. So it's up to you on how you make that decision. But I don't generally throw those cold snaps because of the reason I've just told you. And I will quote this to you if you say to me, cold snap, you should be using it. Well, yes and no. It depends on where you are in the game. So that's the Stasis build. You compare it with like Wicked Implement or the newish Stasis bow is actually really good. I've showed you gameplay of that in the past. Wicked Implement's okay now. It's a little bit decent. It's a little bit better than what it was. It's still not that good, to be honest. But that was the all the builds that I can suggest. Like I said, the only real builds on Stasis Warlock for me are Osmio and maybe the Stag, right? Because the Stag's going to give you a lot of turret energy and keep you alive. Those are the 2 builds I would use on a Stasis Warlock. That was the information on this. Hope you enjoyed. Thank you.